couldn't be here with us. Regina, she is the board president for the Hispanic Women's Organization of Arkansas. But it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. It is a very important time right now. We want to make sure that every single one of you, when you go home, when you go back to your neighborhood, to your schools, that you take the message that it is very important for every single one of us and for our communities to be counted. There's a lot that depends funding that it's going to take into account, and so we want to show the numbers. We want to show the real numbers, and we want to make sure that we participate. That we participate not only within this process of the census, but also that we continue to be engaged and collaborating with what's happening and what's going on, all the different things happening in our community. So when you go back to school, for our students, faculty, staff, make sure that you take that message. Students, take ownership and make sure that you pass that message and information to your parents. It is my pleasure to introduce the director of the U.S. Census Bureau and part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, Dr. Stephen Dillingham. He was sworn in as the 25th Census Bureau Director on January 7th of this year after he received a unanimous confirmation by the U.S. Senate. He has more than 25 years of statistical research and senior management and legal experience in the federal government. He has served as the director of the Bureau of Justice Statistics and the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. Both of these agencies support the national surveys in partnership with the Census Bureau. This is one of the principal agencies in the U.S. federal statistical system, responsible for producing data about the American people and economy. Again, that is why it's so important for us to participate and to be, again, counted. In his capacity as director, he has been tasked with overseeing the implementation of the 2020 census, which will count every single person living in the United States starting on April 1st, 2020. This is a census that is required by the U.S. Constitution and is the largest peacetime mobilization undertaken by the federal government. It has a $50 million operation and hires about 500,000 individuals across the nation. Director Dillingham has served as the director of the Peace Corps Office of the Strategic Information Research and Planning. And other federal service includes directing the research and planning for the Department of Justice Trustee Program and directing surveys for the Office of Personnel Management. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for the Hispanic Women's Organization of Arkansas 19th Annual Conference, Dr. Stephen Dillingham.
Well, good afternoon. It is great to be in this beautiful, natural state, home of the Razorbacks, as well as other collegiate and university teams, and the many also high school students and others that are here today. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for the Hispanic Women's Organization of Arkansas, particularly Margarita Solorzano, for coordinating today's event and for assisting in signing up her wonderful organization as a census partner. The Hispanic Women's Organization of Arkansas is performing such valuable work for the Hispanic community and the entire state of Arkansas, and has done so since 1999. A special thanks also is extended to the Springdale Chamber of Commerce. I had the pleasure of visiting some hard-to-count communities this morning in this area, and I want to thank President Perry Webb and the others that that assisted us and accompanied us on the tour of these hard-to-count areas. Also, many thanks to members of the State Complete Count Committee, several who are here today, for informing us of the many promising and increasing activities that they are planning and executing to achieve full participation in the 2020 census count. I am very optimistic that with the outstanding leadership and bipartisan efforts of Governor Asa Hutchinson, Fort Smith Mayor George McGill, who I had the pleasure of spending some time with today, and the many others and the other mayors that are here today, I want to thank them for their strong support of the 2020 census. Now, nationally, we have a goal of achieving a higher response rate in every state than we did in the last decennial census. And certainly, Arkansas should be at the top of our list in this effort. I know many here in Arkansas, including Mayor Doug Sprouse of Springdale, strongly support a complete count and understand its importance. I was informed that some communities in Arkansas would like to compete with the city of Little Rock and with other more populous areas in reaching a higher population count. Of course, what matters most is that everyone in every city, suburban area, and rural community is in fact counted. I'm so pleased to learn about the commitments made by the schools, K through 12, as well as higher education. Also, the progress and great works being done by the business communities and their leaders. Dr. Jim Rollins, the superintendent of the Springdale schools, and his dedicated associates and teachers are indeed making a tremendous difference. And I thank all the organizations and businesses for doing their fair share and even more. We appreciate your work with our dedicated census officials and partnership team members, and if I could, I would just like to ask them to stand and raise their hands. They represent the Census Bureau. Please stand now if you would. Some have come with me from Washington, D.C. Some of are from our regional office, the assistant director of our regional office from Chicago, and of course, we have the great folks that are working here in Arkansas from the state of Arkansas. Please give them your applause. And I was informed this morning that we will have at least 20 partnership specialists here in Arkansas. And these are people from the Census Bureau that will be working with you and your communities and your organizations in preparation for the 2020 census and throughout the 2020 census. We take great pride in announcing that despite many challenges, we remain on mission, on schedule, on budget, and on course to complete the biggest, most effective decennial census ever. Our goal is to count everyone, every single living person in the United States once, only once, and in the right place. The 2020 census takes advantage of many new technologies and data, and it protects personal data and minimizes risk. The census is a massive project involving years of planning and preparation, but we are increasingly ready. In less than 6 months, households across America will receive invitations to respond to the census, and we will collect and tabulate the responses more quickly, professionally, and fairly than ever before. And I think it's important that I remind everyone that responding to the census is easy, it is safe, and it is important. It is easy because for the first time, there will be 3 ways to respond to the census. It's always been on paper and always by mail, and it will still be on paper and by mail if you so choose. But you can now answer the census online or over the phone. So these new options are extremely important. This means that everyone living in the United States can complete the 2020 census anywhere and at any time. The questionnaire can be completed by passengers on a bus with Wi-Fi, and I might note that Fort Smith is designing a traveling van now with Wi-Fi that will have laptops in that van. I have a picture of it I left at the table, and it's unique and one of the most innovative things that I have seen in going around the country. but you can answer at a church, even at a Razorback sports event, although it will not be football season. Some of you might say that's good. I don't know, basketball season though. But at any event or gathering in Arkansas, I want to reiterate the Bureau's commitment to including easy response options for all households, including those with limited or no internet access. All non-responding households will receive a paper questionnaire at least by the 4th mailing, because we will do 5 different mailings to your house until we get an answer from you. And then, if you don't answer in one of these 3 ways, we have a delightful crew that's well-trained and very diplomatic, and they'll come knocking at your door, and they will ask for the information personally. And it will go into their device, it will be encrypted, and very safely transmitted over the internet. The telephone option is available for individuals who prefer to use it, and we will have customer assistance centers that you will be able to call up. We have 10 centers across the country serving the entire nation, and they will answer your questions and take your information in 13 languages. Also, they will be able to provide, as well as by internet, assistance materials in 59 languages. So we will be able to reach more than 99% of the population through our expanded language assistance. Again, the census will be easier than ever. It will also be safe. The data will be kept safe and secure, protected by the best systems available, and through the protection of very strong federal laws. These laws were passed by Congress in the 1950s. If anyone for the Census Bureau violates these laws, they're subject to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. That hasn't happened, and that will not happen. The people at the Census Bureau are, in fact, professionally trained and committed in the way they conduct the census, and that's why we have an excellent, successful track record. No one will get personal information, not even law enforcement. It can only be used to develop population statistics. Now, the third part, I want to thank the representative from Tyson's, and I want to thank Raphael for mentioning the importance of the census. It is important in so many ways that we could spend hours, but the census data is used each and every day in by almost every organization, by government at all levels, and by businesses at large. It improves the quality of our life, and it's a basis by which we make investments, both public and private investments. As the business community, which we're just meeting with them while we're here in Northwest Arkansas, is very much aware how important this data is. When you think about data, and you think about public policies, for example, or private investments, you almost always reduce it down to the number of people to be served or the number of customers that you have. So it's very important data. It supports a multitude of programs and services, including, as has been mentioned, health care, education, school lunches, transportation, and much more. Census data leads to better decisions for businesses, governments, communities, families, friends, and individuals. Every community benefits from an accurate and complete census count. I want to personally thank each of you for the important work you are doing every day to promote public awareness about the importance of the 2020 census. And let me tell you, I heard and learned so much today in a matter of hours of the great things being done in the state of Arkansas. Everyone here is committed to a complete and accurate 2020 census. I want you to know how we appreciate the efforts of everyone and your help also in assisting some of the challenges. It's not always easy work, but it is work that we take great pride in. It's been said that the greatest reward for doing is the opportunity to do more. We hope everyone will continue and expand their efforts. We are in the process of issuing a national call to action in all states and all communities by urging everyone to engage and do more. This call to action begins in the great state of Arkansas. Now is the time. Please share this message that responding to the census is easy, safe, and important, and there is no higher civic responsibility. Thank you again for inviting me to Arkansas and for carrying the 2020 census torch in your state as we begin our 2020 national sprint across the nation. Muchas gracias.
Hello. I would like to present the Arkansas Traveler to Dr. Dillingham, but first reading this note. The Arkansas Traveler. Arkansans have long been known for their hospitality and their love of their beautiful state. This certificate expresses the state's special recognition to out-of-state visitors who have contributed to the progress, enjoyment, or well-being of the state of Arkansas to her people. The story behind the Arkansas Traveler is simple. While traveling through the Arkansas backcountry in the early 19th century, Colonel Sandy Faulkner, tired and hungry, came upon a humble squatter's cabin. He found the occupant sitting in the doorway, playing the first part of a familiar tune over and over on an old fiddle. Faulkner stopped and asked for accommodation. The squatter offered none. When Faulkner asked why he played the same part of the tune over and over, the squatter replied that he didn't know the rest. When Faulkner played the turn of the tune, the squatter changed his mind, making the traveler royally welcome for as long as he pleased. Like that long ago traveler, we hope that you have a good visit, enjoy our state, share your own turn of the tune with us, and always have nice things to say and good stories to tell about Arkansas.
Thank you again for participating, and thank you again to Dr. Dillingham from the U.S. Census. Right now, we would like to introduce Jennifer Peñate for the following session, the final session, here in the next couple of minutes.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed your lunch. Thank you so much for having me. I will be moderating the feature panel this afternoon, and I'm very honored to do so. Now, I want to remind everyone about the objective of this panel, which is to bring to the forefront the economic impact of Northwest Arkansas and the impact it has across the whole state, and to discuss how Northwest Arkansas can further adapt to embrace contributions from the diverse groups here in our area. So now I would like to introduce our panelists. And I'm going to keep the introductions very short, but their full bios are in your program if you'd like to read those. So first up on the stage is Stephanie Orman. She is the mayor for the city of Bentonville. Sorry, I'm very short and trying to lower this because it's very tall. Here we go. or higher. Okay, there we go. Thank you. All right, next up, now that I have the mic situated, David Sordo. He's a research associate with the Center for Business and Economic Research. Also on stage, we have Aaron Hogue, the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Operations for Walmart.org. Michael Harvey, he's the Chief Operating Officer for the Northwest Arkansas Council. And last but not least, we have Doug Sprouse, the Mayor of Springdale. We have several questions prepared. The panelists have received these questions beforehand so they could practice their answers and be very well informed with what we want our discussion to be. And again, we want this to be very conversational and a learning experience for all of us. So to all of our panelists, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I just realized none of you have microphones. There we go.
Test, see.
As I am asking these questions, anyone can answer, so feel free to raise your hand and then the microphone will be passed down the line to whoever will answer. So our first question, in your opinion, what have been the largest contributions to the pace of our area's growth? It has been booming for the last decade.
I'll start.
Okay.
I think our job growth, our job opportunities, we're sitting here in Northwest Arkansas with sub 3% unemployment. We have the leading job creators in the state right here on this stage, or representing cities that are right here on this, representing on the stage. We have certainly a wonderful quality of life here in Northwest Arkansas, and I believe we're a very welcoming region as well. So I think those things certainly contribute to our rapid growth.
I guess just to jump on that, the region's really experienced a lot of growth in a lot of high-skilled industries like business and professional services, which has between August 2012 and August 2019 seen an increase of 14,300 jobs, and health and education, which has seen an increase of about 5,700 jobs in that same period. And between August 2019 and 2012 and 2019, we've seen 54,000 jobs created, and we've only seen about 58,600 people join the labor market. So we've been creating more jobs than people have been coming into the labor market, which is a pretty big achievement. And is why today we see about 2.6% unemployment for the year. So I think just to jump on those points, I mean, we have a lot of large companies which are producing a lot of high-value services and products across the nation, and they just happen to be located right here. So, yeah.
I'm definitely not the numbers person, so I'll let David handle that. But just to piggyback on Mayor Sprouse and David's comments about the data, is actually the history of the region's approach to coming at this as a regional effort and coming together and thinking about ways we can recruit industries into the region, come together and address infrastructure enhancements or capabilities to complement the quality of life that we're continuing to see, I think really has helped some of those components propel at a faster rate than other areas.
And that partly answered a follow-up question to that, which is what has contributed to retaining those industries, right? And keeping those jobs, the creation of the jobs, pretty stable, if not growing here in the area.
I'm going to tag on to that and answer your question, hopefully. I think we owe a huge thank you to the businesses, the industry in the area, because they've really invested in this area. And you can see that throughout Northwest Arkansas, and you can see that in the quality of life. And so from my standpoint, those community partners, those business partners have really put us over the top in Northwest Arkansas.
Anyone else on that? No? Michael?
I think this is a community, and I've worked doing economic development for almost 25 years now. I mean, in 4 states, and I've never worked in a community that is invested in itself like Northwest Arkansas. And I think that that goes a long way to perpetuating the growth that we've seen. And when I say that, I'm talking about in our physical and social infrastructure. So if you look at kind of the fast-growing areas around the country, they're having a hard time keeping up. And I think we've done a good job of kind of staying ahead of that in terms of physical infrastructure, and again now social infrastructure with our education institutions and training and so forth. And as Mayor Sprouse alluded to, you know, investing in quality of life amenities to retain talent is, I think, a big competitive advantage for Northwest Arkansas. So there's a lot of that, I think, philanthropic posture, attitude, Northwest Arkansas that's really kind of contributed to sustaining the growth over the years.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, and Mike touched on it a little bit, but also, you know, as far as retaining or those things that help keep the growth coming, I think there's nothing besides certainly jobs, certainly our education. I see Dr. Rollins over here, and I can brag on the Springdale School District, and I'm happy to do that anytime, but I think all of our schools, speaking regionally, I think we all do a good job up here, an excellent job, with many challenges. You know, the challenges of growth are real, but there are certainly challenges that I know we'll take over the alternative of not growing, and so I think as a region, we handle that from our school districts to our municipalities, to our employers. I think we handle it as well as anyone could. I think I'm very proud of and again, being very welcoming as communities.
And you mentioned, of course, challenges, which would be, you know, infrastructure, of course, language barriers, diversity. So what are some things that we could improve to keep that going, to make it better, to make it more inclusive, more welcoming, and keep the growth going?
And David and I were kind of the two data nerds up here. I was digging in on some data. You know, you talked specifically about diversity, and I think it's really important that we do focus on educational attainment. I was digging into some of the numbers, and it was quite striking to me when I was looking at kind of the breakdowns of our demographic breakdowns in terms of educational attainment. What I saw is generally the newer populations having a much lower educational attainment. And that's not surprising to me, obviously. You know, coming from other countries and then settling in the region and working. But I think the key challenge there is getting the next generation more educated as you come up through. If you look at the numbers, for instance, the white non-Hispanic population in Northwest Arkansas has about 38, 39% college degrees. The black population has about 35 or 36%. The Asian population has about 70%. If you look at, for instance, the Marshallese and Hispanic populations, the Marshallese are about 9, and the Hispanic population is about 13. And so that's something we really, really need to focus on to make sure and do it in an inclusive way that we're getting people up that economic ladder so everybody's able to participate in the prosperity of this region. So for me, that was kind of one of the big areas that I think we should focus on.
So one of the things I was mentioned earlier about our strengths of coming together as a region to approach infrastructure or regional issues, I think is also an opportunity for growth, making sure that stakeholders at that table reflect all aspects of the community, and those voices are informing future decisions that we're making to get to the whether it's educational attainment that Harvey's speaking about here, or health or access to other areas in our community. We have seen tremendous growth as a region, but with that growth has come significant disparities in access. And if we're not intentional about understanding those gaps and barriers and actually having all members of the community that experience all facets of our sectors, helping us get to the root causes of those, we won't be able to actually continue to progress and provide enhanced quality of life for all members of the community.
Stephanie?
So I'm going to take this from a little more of a grassroots level. I would encourage all of you out there to get to know your neighbor. Get to know someone like Margarita, who is extremely engaged, and ask her, how can I get engaged? How do you, get involved with a board, get involved with something in your neighborhood. So I would encourage everyone out there to kind of take on some of your own accountability to be engaged and to make people, to meet your neighbor. And I think that's when you start to really attack it from the ground up and you start that inclusion at that point, I think that's where we really start to become, that just becomes second nature to us to welcome people. And so from my standpoint and a community standpoint, that's really what I'm trying to focus in on is on the ground level and the grassroots level of that inclusion. And that means from education to throw in the neighborhood coffee and getting to know those people in your neighborhood, because when you know each other, when you build those relationships, you're going to accomplish so much more.
So the next question was, how do we do it, right? And you answered partly, how do we do this? How do we increase inclusivity, break those stereotypes that we have? We all have them about different groups, whether that's, ethnicities or religion, et cetera. So how do we break away from what makes us comfortable to be able to include other people? How do we, target those groups who have certain cultural norms that don't necessarily put a lot of emphasis on education? I have a nonprofit that's called Girls Unstoppable, and what I do is I go into elementary schools one time a week, and I talk to young girls, they're between 10 and 12, about the importance of education. And a lot of them say, well, when I ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, my cousin is a waitress, so I'll just do that. Or, so their scope is very limited to what they can accomplish. So what do we do other than, grassroots to really say, I care about you and we can build this together? And yes, you can do that without, let's say, insulting your culture.
So to your example, I think it's really important for leadership to reflect the communities we are living in. And so, it's a little cliche, but if you can see it, you can be it. We need more and more individuals being supported through leadership, whether it's city council or in their own place of work. Things that Walmart is looking at ourselves internally and are spending a lot of time thinking about how our workforce reflects the communities and the customers we're serving day in and day out. And that is a long-term play. It's pipeline development, it's investment in people, it's an investment and commitment in a hiring practice to hire people with diverse backgrounds and experiences that adds a different perspective to actually get at root causes. And so for me, I think leadership and access to leadership roles is really important, and it takes all of us supporting each other in ways to do that.
First of all, I really appreciate what Mayor Orman said about the grassroots level. And this has nothing to do with different demographics necessarily, but we as a society, as a culture, many times we don't know any more about our neighbors than beyond when their garage door goes up and down. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be better neighbors and to reach out, and I really appreciate what she said, because I agree. I think that's ultimately what has to happen. I think municipalities, I think government certainly has a role to play, but ultimately it's going to be up to each of us as individuals to reach out and step out of our comfort zone a little bit, step out of our box of what's familiar, and get out there and explore and learn and engage with those we don't know. I think certainly our school districts, I believe they're on the front lines of this change that we've experienced over the last 25, 30 years. And they have a unique ability, because of the contact they have with children and with their parents, to really play a role. And I think they are. I think they're playing a very positive role. But it is all going to come down to individuals as we as a city, as a school district, as a region, as an employer, we can all work at trying to foster the atmosphere and build that atmosphere where people are more comfortable stepping out and engaging with others that may not be like them.
I'd add to that, and you guys hit on leadership. When they say leadership, that should include boards of nonprofits, boards of corporations, and elected office. And I'm maybe speaking out of turn here, I just don't think we as a region have done a good enough job yet cultivating a candidate pool, I guess, for those types of positions around the region. And I think the nonprofit community and the Northwest Arkansas Council, I know we're looking at this, can do a better job of actually organizing better candidate pools for all of these positions and cultivating people and bringing them up through the ranks through the various nonprofits and organizations around the community. I think what we have right now in place in terms of board representations and elected office and so forth does not look like our community. And so I think we need to be a lot more deliberate about doing that. And I think that will actually help, us progress as a region if we do that.
And how can we tackle that?
Wow, thanks. I'm not going to tell you how. I mean, I'm not here to tell you how. I'm just here to talk about the problem.
Come on.
I think Aaron can probably tell you how. No, one of the things that we're kicking around right now at the council is the idea of a leadership type of institute, like a candidate training forum and so forth, that you could actually take people through that process. And being kind of a representative of the business community, we would actually work with employers to say, you need to let this person, have the time to serve if they so choose to do that. And so we feel like from a regional perspective, from the council's, posture in the region, that we could do a better job of doing that. And I know Nelson is looking at this very aggressively with partners up the Rogers Chamber and Walton Foundation and so forth to put something like this together. So I think that's a good first step. And you would work with, I think, again, a bunch of nonprofits. I think the Young Professionals Group and some of our other nonprofits around the community, I think, would be good farm system to bring this talent in to help cultivate them for these leadership roles. And it doesn't have to be elected office. It could be boards of nonprofits or corporate boards and so forth. But I think we've done a poor job of actually doing that. And we, as a community, I think, are getting to a point to where there's been a maturation, a second generation, if you will, of a lot of these groups that came in the 90s and early parts of the 2000s, that there's really no excuse for us not to be doing that now. So, Aaron, do you have anything to add? I'm sure you do.
Maybe not. Okay. Well, there is a challenge for all you nonprofits out there.
I was just going to say, we have amazing nonprofits. Many of you are doing this work every day in, day out. And I know from my work with you, the interest is there for engagement and the roles you can play in that. And I think my ask is that you continue to push back with businesses or leaders on this stage to help us know how we can help support that growth and that pipeline opportunity, and also where we can be an advocate or where we're in your way. We can all be our own worst enemies too. So where can we step back and actually just be your biggest cheerleader in the work you're doing and bringing people along?
Wonderful. We're all learning. So when it comes to cultural growth and economic growth, of course, here in Northwest Arkansas, what is the impact that we're having on the rest of the state, and what can we do to have them follow suit, per se? David?
I wasn't expecting to speak this much up here, actually, but I did some digging on this too. And the second part of your question, I'm not sure how to answer, but I want to give people some perspective on the growth in Northwest Arkansas and how it relates to the rest of the state of Arkansas. I was, again, digging around yesterday on some data, looking all the way back 50 years to 1969. If you kind of look at the growth in Arkansas and Northwest Arkansas over the decades, what you see is Northwest Arkansas rising in terms of its contribution to the growth of the state. And so whereas in the 70s we were about 12%, 11.8% of the state's employment growth, since 2001 we've been almost 70% of the state's growth, to give you some perspective. So it's been, that trajectory has been exponential and stratospheric. I mean, there was a point in the early part of the decade that we were 80% of the state's job growth. We're also about 60% of the state's population growth. We're talking about 2 counties in the whole state that are responsible for that much growth in the state. So, again, I don't really have a point on the second part of that question, except to say that at some point in the future, Little Rock's going to have to pay a lot more attention to Northwest Arkansas, because this is where the political, the whole gravity of the state is going to be. I feel like it actually already is, but how you guys feel about it?
I got a similar question many times as in my involvement in the Arkansas Municipal League, and over the years, and I've led workshops and spoken at, and a big question I get from around the state is, what's the secret sauce for the success of Northwest Arkansas and the growth of Northwest Arkansas? And I really believe that this goes back several years, that Northwest Arkansas, we were in a position, and I say we as Northwest Arkansas, didn't have a lot to do with it, but we were in the position that we had to do it. If we were going to move forward, we had to do it, because we weren't going to get the help from the rest of the state or from Little Rock necessarily. And I don't mean to be ugly here, but I think we did it because we had to. And now, as I try and answer that question for people from around the state, I think the big moving force from 30,000 feet is that we work very well together as a region and continue to work well as a region. And I think that's a wonderful example for the rest of the state. And I think now we're seeing other regions of the state begin to try and work more regionally. And I think that'll work in their favor as they move forward.
David, you had mentioned about 29 people move on average a day to our area. How do you project that to go in the future? Will it grow? Will it, any take on that?
Well, I would say for the time being, it will stay consistent. I guess our economy is really dominated by some large employers, and they're reaching a maturity stage. So I think going forward, we'll have to facilitate growth through our startups, through young companies, through attracting other people here. And that's something that I think in general, as a region, we're doing pretty well. In 2017, about 10.8% of the population here is foreign-born. So it's kind of great, like bringing up what the mayor mentioned, it's like we work well together here. We're also very accepting here of people from different parts of the countries and from even different countries. And I think as long as we help to continue to facilitate that, to work with that, to engage those groups, and to pretty much be an open space towards commerce and different groups, we can probably keep up a lot of the growth we've seen. Like it's about 28.5 since like the last census. We can probably continue that growth going.
I would just say that in Northwest Arkansas, I think there's just an excitement in the air. There's entrepreneurship, and it's well and it's alive, and that's a big part of what I think attracts people to this. Yes, we have obviously we have Walmart here, and several other large companies, but you're right. I think the continued growth is that entrepreneur spirit, and also what Mayor Sprouse was talking about. It's true, when you go to Municipal League, you hear lots of stories of just kind of those relationships and those connections not being there. And in Northwest Arkansas, yes, we have differences, but we tend to come to the table and I call it a can-do attitude. We figure out how we can do it. So I think that's just unique to this area. And it's really a tribute to certainly people that came way before me and kind of creating that atmosphere.
And I think it's important just to also, we are welcoming, and we have experienced a lot of growth, but with growth also comes challenges. And we also need to continue to have conversations about how the growing diversity of our region continues to be supportive of all members of the community, and accessing gaps to barriers for all quality of life is addressed too. And so continuing just to acknowledge that conversation has to continue every year as we continue to see growth growing.
And when it comes to welcoming, what can we do better as people, as groups, organizations, city leaders, just members of the society to help people feel safe? In the last few years, people have feared a little bit, because of the political climate, and we can't ignore that. So what can we do better to address that?
Just a couple of things. Thanks to a Tyson grant, we were able to hire for this year a welcoming coordinator as part of our welcoming communities effort, and she's doing a wonderful job, and we hope that we'll be able to continue that. But we have, my police chief, did Chief Peters have to leave? He was sitting right over there, but I can't count the number of times we've gone before groups. We'll go before any group that asks and answer questions and hopefully give out good information about what's going on, how enforcement is done, what the city is doing to help alleviate some of those fears. We do have a very safe community. We live in a very safe region, but that doesn't happen by accident. And involving and having events, just a very little bit of what police do has to do with enforcement. It has to do with community outreach. It has to do with, Dr. Rollins, our school resource program, where we partner with the school district, and where we have a better understanding that we're all in this. Everyone wants to be safe, and everyone wants to be part of the community. And I'm gonna touch on one other thing that came up, because when Mike was talking about opportunities to serve and opportunities to get involved, we have. I'm giving you an open invitation to go to the city website and fill out a resume, because many positions in the city, they're not all elected. Many are appointed. And we have a very diverse planning commission, for instance, and those are great. Boards and commissions are a great opportunity to get involved and to learn more about the city, and then launch. If you have a desire to be an elected official at some point, that's great background, and we're always open and looking for folks that want to serve and on different boards and commissions in our community.
So I asked, this is again not my bailiwick, but I asked Margot Master, who runs the Engage Northwest Arkansas program for us at the council, to, and I've seen the work that she's been doing, and again, that's with Aaron's support and Tyson Food's support over the past couple years, and some of the changes that have happened in this region. And she actually sent me some examples of some things that are going on in the community right now that I think are going to have a huge impact. One of them sitting at a table right down here named Giovanni Sarmiento. Welcome back from Mexico City, so glad to see you. Giovanni is actually, Mayor Strauss mentioned the position in Springdale. Giovanni is going to be that analog in Rogers, and I think that's a huge deal that the city of Rogers and the chamber stepped forward to bring Giovanni on to kind of lead their efforts in D&I in the city of Rogers. She mentioned the Ideals Institute. So that is at the University of Arkansas, right, Margot? And they are doing diversity training work around the region, around the state, as I understand it, and that's a new institute. She mentioned that there was a workshop called Facing Bias, and it was about racial equity and microaggressions, and about 550 people have gone through that already. Arvest Bank, for example, has hired their first diversity director, and then, of course, the governor has really been pushing on supporting the census count and so forth. So I think there's a lot of things that are going on. It didn't specifically get to your question about how we're alleviating that. But I think as a community, the more and more of this that we do, the more deliberate we are about it, I think the more we're going to bring people along. As David mentioned some of the numbers a while ago, we have for 50 years welcomed people from all over. We of about that 30 people that are here new every day, about 20 of them come from somewhere else. And about 20% of them are from another country. And so we are used to, as a region, bringing people in from elsewhere. And again, I think we just need to be, as a community, more deliberate with initiatives like this to make people feel more welcome.
Very good. All right, so we have about 10 minutes left, and I do want to touch the subject of the 2020 census, of course. We heard Dr. Dillingham talk about it and the importance of it. So what will the impact be for Mayor Orman and Mayor Sprouse, each city individually, and then y'all as, in the business community for the region?
So there's obviously economic impact. We're probably a city that will hit just over 50,000. That puts us into a different category. And so for us, it's definitely important. We talked a lot about, I think earlier, about infrastructure, and that's huge for us. When you're in growth mode, it's a great thing. We have jobs. It's a good thing for this area, but also the infrastructure is incredibly expensive. And so if we can make sure we have an accurate count, that is going to help us on our end to be able to have the resources to put the infrastructure in place to support the growth.
As the mayor said, we've got, there is funding tied to our per capita numbers and to our population. There's state turnback funding that goes directly to our road maintenance, the infrastructure within our cities. Far beyond that, there's a number, I've heard the number of $2,500, I think, per person per year in federal funds that flow not necessarily through the city, but to our residents through different opportunities and grants. We've got, as I know Bentonville does, we've got our complete count committee up and running. We've had it up for a while. Catherine Burkhead. Catherine, wave a little bit in case anyone has a question for Catherine later. She chairs that committee, and we've got we've got the business community, all of our diverse community well represented, I believe. Churches, schools as well, businesses, as I said, and doing great work. I will tell you, this is my second 10-year census that I had, nationwide census that I've had an opportunity to go through. In 2010, I had just been in office about a year, and I thought we had a great effort then. We had a complete count committee, but I can tell you that we're way ahead of where we were at this time 10 years ago. And it's encouraging to see Bentonville and other cities in the region also forming those committees and moving ahead, because really we all have the same message. It's all about getting everyone counted, regardless of who you are, where you're from, how long you've been here, and it's important to every member of the community that everyone gets counted, because that directly impacts our ability as cities to return services to all of our residents.
I think just to add to that, so the census is directly related to about how $675 billion of federal funds for things like schools, hospitals, roads, public works, and some other public programs get divvied up across the country. So I mean, the fact that we've experienced so much growth in this region, we went from about like 463,000 people from the last census to recently we're about like 520 some odd thousand just in 2017. And that growth is going to continue into the next census. So it's important that everyone engage, we get as many people to fill out the census and fill out accurately, because the region has greatly changed from 10 years ago. And if we don't accurately account for that, different services won't be provided at an optimal rate. And in general, businesses rely upon this. Businesses are thinking about this, where to put houses, where to put new developments. And so, going going forward, if you want to accurately, serve our communities here, it's important that we keep in mind the changes that have happened and record them accurately.
I'll just add, from a Walmart perspective, this is something that we're paying close attention to nationally, and a part of a national coalition tied to corporations, community organizations, to really help encourage ways that we get out and encourage households to be counted. Specifically in Arkansas, here I am going to try some data, but don't quote me on it, okay, guys? I did read, I think there's about 20% of Arkansans are in hard-to-reach communities around, and which would result in about $1 million not coming to the state to support infrastructure like roads. I live in Fayetteville, drive to Bentonville every day, so that impacts my daily commute. The schools where my kids are in, and the type of services they're providing. And then from a federal level, the services, whether it's SNAP, Medicaid, Medicare, those dollars coming into the services provided. Why is it important for Walmart? It helps, census numbers helps us project growth plans. It helps us understand the communities where we live and work, the type of workforce we're going to need to better serve our customers, and those numbers are really important to us to continue to operate and better meet our customers' needs.
Okay. We have about 4 minutes. So as a closing question, what do you think needs to be implemented to continue harmonious growth, both economically and, of course, in population, as we continue to be more diverse here in our region?
Okay, well, I'm going to take this from a grassroots level again, and I have what I call a horseshoe theory that every one of you sitting out there in this room can take advantage of. Any event you're at, anywhere you go, do not huddle up in a circle and don't let anybody else in that circle. Make that horseshoe, make someone feel like they're welcome and to come into that. And that's how you build the community. That's how you build inclusion in my mind.
How about we just go down the line? Erin,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah. So I would just say continue, many of the other points I've already shared, continuing to make sure that the conversation reflects the communities that we're serving. People have a seat at the table, their voices are heard, their perspectives about how they're interacting in our community with different sectors is actually accurate, and we have leaders who reflect those communities to respond to and support growth.
I think the main thing from my perspective would be for local leaders to keep an emphasis on trying to maintain a high quality of life at an affordable price. We've experienced a lot of growth over the last 10 years, heck, since about 1990, and a lot of that growth has been driven by the fact that you have good paying jobs, you have a lot of affordable housing, some solid schools, and local university. And especially recently with all this growth, all these jobs, housing affordability is becoming an issue. There's infrastructure issues and congestion issues that Erin deals with on a daily basis, and it pretty much just becomes a way of how do we continue everything that's good that's happened and avoid the growing pains that we've experienced.
Yeah, I think I would just reiterate some of the things that have been said today about getting out in your community and getting to know people. It's hard to hate or dislike somebody if you know them personally. Some people not so much maybe, but some people you dislike more when you get to know them. But I'm just saying, it's, I think a lot of the mess and tension that happens in this country now is everybody kind of gets in their corners and they just don't talk to one another, and I think we just need more of that interaction in the community. I think if we did, we would find that we have a heck of a lot more in common than we do, differences. So any opportunities we get to do that as a community, I think is time well spent.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it back down to the individual again. We can, our police department, our fire department, our city, we work hard at recruiting a very diverse workforce. We've had some level of of success at that, but we're certainly not where we need to be. But I think, you know, whatever programs government comes up with, or they can be great, they're needed, but they're not the ultimate answer. It is up to the individual. Every one of us have a sphere of influence. Every one of us have responsibilities, whether at work or with our families, and maybe in volunteer work we do even. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to reach outside of ourselves and sometimes maybe even get a little uncomfortable and make a I think intentional was a word used earlier, an intentional effort to bridge those gaps. We'll find that those gaps aren't nearly as wide as we may first believe. And then getting along with others, you know, just because you disagree with somebody on one issue doesn't mean you can't be friends and you can't work together for the common good and for common goals and purposes that help all of us and certainly help our cities and our region.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I hope that this panel discussion helped you learn a little bit more about our region, the growth, and what still needs to be done, both on our personal level and as a group and community and a state as a whole. So thank you so much to all of our panelists again, Mayor Sprouse, of course, Michael Harvey, David Sordo, Aaron Hogue, and Mayor Orman. Thank you so much for your contribution to our program today.
And just to close out for today, we would just like to thank everybody for being here. Please stay for the final session for today. It's going to be called A Magic Trick Come Out to Disappear. So thank you so much. That session will be at the chapel in room 101 from 2 to 3. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being here.